and it is a caring community that supports, educates, and empowers individuals and families currently coping with the impact of cancer in their lives. Thanks to the generous donors of the Gathering Place, all of our programs are presented free of charge. We offer one-on-one support, group support, nutrition, exercise programming, along with healing arts in programs such as Tai Chi and Reiki. Welcome to our second in our series of town halls focusing on COVID-19 and its impact on cancer patients. Cancer diagnosis is scary enough, but when faced with COVID-19, there are lots of other considerations that come to mind. We knew we wanted to do something to help those on the cancer journey. So we spoke to health professionals, our participants, and our staff to understand what the greatest areas of concerns were and how could we help. One topic that kept resurfacing was financials. How should I be making decisions related to my money and to my health? We were fortunate. We were able to turn to Robert Valentine, a financial advisor who has volunteered at the Gathering Place for the past 18 years. So glad that he can join us this evening. Our purpose tonight is to provide you with information that you can use when considering financial options. I want to be very clear though, we are not giving advice, but rather providing questions to ask, where to find resources, and how the CARES Act may offer you some relief. While Bob is presenting tonight, if you have any questions, please send them to us. At the end of his presentation, he will try to answer as many of the questions we receive as possible. I know in preparing for tonight with Bob, I learned an awful lot of information. Whether you're married, single, you rent or own a home, if you've lost a job or been furloughed, there's a lot of information that you'll be able to receive tonight that I know will help. Now, let's turn it over to Bob.
Michelle, thank you for that great introduction. Let me get my screen up here.
Perfect.
Very good. Okay. Thank you for that, Lou. Thank you. Thank you for your patience on that. Again, Michelle, thank you for the great introduction, and it's a pleasure to be with you tonight. And I thank all the participants for sharing their evening with us. COVID-19's unexpected consequences has really changed our lives and our routines and our behaviors. Not only is the global economy impacted by this virus, I'm sure that each one of you are uncertain about your personal financial security. Although we are now clouded in fear and uncertainty, this session should provide you important information and ideas that may better influence your next series of financial decisions. So to kind of repeat what Michelle just said, my objective this evening is to give you some points and some information about the overview of the COVID-19 bill called the CARES Act. And I will not give you any financial recommendations, but we'll talk quite a bit about what you may have some alternatives in doing along the way. But let me begin with the topics that we're going to address tonight. We're going to discuss your financial resources as well as the resources of the CARES Act bill. Number one, your personal financial legacy and legacy resources. We'll go into some detail as to specifically what you can use to get through this interim interruption in your life and your financial circumstances. Secondly, we'll look at the majority of the personal finances and resources in the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, Economic Security Act, also known as CARES. And then we'll periodically talk about how the stimulus or the stimuli will impact you and what you can take advantage of. And like Michelle said, with questions I don't get today, please send those through the chat and we'll answer those at the end of this evening's presentation. But before we get into the actual specifics of the technical parts of the bill and the new CARES Act, I want to kind of bring up to you a concept that's very important. In my 4 decades as a certified financial planner practitioner and a certified financial and life transitionist, I've discovered that there are really 2 sides of money. There are the technical sides of money, that some people refer to as the left side, which are all the typical jargon of taxes, investments, estate planning, cash flow, and risk management. Oftentimes, people get lost in that jargon and it becomes confusing as to what it really means. But on the right side of the brain, there is a personal side of money. It's the relationships, how money defines and develops relationships. And what is your relationship with money? It talks about the emotions that is gendered by your feelings about money, hopes and dreams, and your definition as a family, as a self-esteem and sense of well-being. Now, why do I bring this up? Is that both of these sides are equally important and complex, but it's the personal side that drives the decision-making. So this evening, when we get all done, my hope is that you'll have your right and left side working in unison before you make a decision going forward as to what you do during this period of the coronavirus. So while I'm talking about the technical sides this evening, please ask yourself this question as I'm talking. Where do I stand financially? Where am I most vulnerable financially? And what additional changes do I feel that I must make right now or have already made and question at this point? But don't prejudge your condition financially until you have all the facts from this evening. So this is going to be a really discussion to kind of talk about all the things you could think about as you approach your decisions from a combination of both sides of money, keeping your technical side in touch with your emotional side and not letting your emotional side get away with you. So let's talk about the technical side of your personal financial situation. We want to look at what I call is your recurring income sources. So if you were employed and now are not employed, what other type of recurring revenue or income do you have coming into your family, into your home? Do you have additional short-term or long-term disability income in the meantime? Or do you have Social Security or public employee retirement system or state teachers retirement system or some other fixed income guaranteed income program that's continuing to supplement your income needs? Or have you been dependent upon gifts from family members or inheritance on an occasional basis? And this may apply to individuals who are just starting out where they're dependent upon their parents getting them started, but now maybe the parents are put to this situation when they can't afford to make those gifts. Or vice versa, there are many people who are retired counting on their children for their subsidies, quote unquote, and maybe those children are unable to continue. So as you begin to look at this personal side of income in your personal assets, are you maybe employed as a self-employed person, or are you involved in the so-called gig economy, which is like a driver for Uber or Lyft, or maybe working at Starbucks as a barista, any type of employment? Or have you been able now to devote more time to your self-employment income that you had thought about for a long time to develop? So what other recurring income do you have to consider going forward to build your plan for recovery with the coronavirus pandemic? And what are the CARE Act opportunities that we can pull from to help you as a family? Second technical side is the opposite side of income. It's the expense side. Now, we're not going to talk about all your major expenses, but we're going to talk about probably the more major recurring one, like mortgage payment and or home equity line of credit. Or if you're not a homeowner, what about those rent obligations that you have to make on a regular basis? So now we're in the middle of April. Did you make your April payment to on your rent? Or are you still behind 1 or 2 months? Major medical insurance and private insurance plans. How does that fit in now to your major recurring expenses that may be new or has been there for all of these years anyhow? And what about medical expenses? What medical expenses are you now dealing with that have to be considered on a regular basis to pay those and to reduce the actual balances on those medical expenses? Taxes will always be an issue. Where are we with taxes? Because yesterday was April 15th, was tax deadline day, but we'll talk about it's been postponed. And we'll talk about one of the major increases in loan balances are student loans. So we'll try to talk about those and see how the other debt and the CARES Act may fit in to give you some reprieve and how to help you get through this crisis. One other side of a personal nature that belongs to you as an individual is your assets, your personal financial resources. So we talked about income, we talked about expenses. Then when you look at your balance sheet or we look at what you own, you probably have savings account or savings accounts. You may have an investment portfolio. That's maybe a general terminology for maybe mutual funds. You have money invested in maybe cash value life insurance that has some cash surrender value. You may even have money sitting in investment property. You may have a small double or an apartment building that you may also have. So we're going to examine those personal financial resources. And if you're fortunate enough to have a paid up home or a home that you've been paying on a mortgage for a long time, you may have some built up in your principal residence equity that may be use to you down the road to be able to provide you interim cash. Lastly, but not leastly, our 401ks, 403bs, deferred comps, all those retirement plans are out there. How do we have access to those, including the IRA accounts? Because those may be points of resources for you. And how liquid or how accessible are they? And we'll talk about that this evening. If we had to get to those, what does the CARE Act provide in terms of your access to these particular retirement accounts?
Great.
So,
wow, Bob, you've asked so many questions. You've put so many questions in my mind. What kinds of things should I be thinking about? How can I survive in this challenging period? And what hoops will I have to jump through to get to my own money?
well, that's a great question. So what I want to do is get you to pause before we go into a lot of detail, because the fact is, when people look at an emerging situation, they begin to look at their savings accounts, their investment portfolio, and their cash value life insurance. They begin to cash in all those things, or they attempt to go out and maybe talk to their bank about refinancing their residence or refinancing a line of credit, etc. But if you're not employed, that may be a challenge, because at this point, you need these questions to fall back on. So we're going to talk a little bit more about all the other opportunities to address this, but I wanted people to know that it may be important to stave off addressing or attacking these, if you will, until we see what the other benefits are in the CARES Act to take a look at. And we may be able to see how we can access retirement accounts that for the time being, up until now, they had some restrictions about having access to them. And I know what I want to get across this evening. Majority of people, when they see a lot of new rules, new tax bills, and the CARES Act is no different, it's full of so many different things, they may become overwhelmed and confused and say, I really don't want to do it. I'd much rather just take and tackle all these accounts. So if you can kind of bear with us this evening, we'll get through some of the benefits for you to take advantage of some of the provisions in the CARES Act. So in summary, before we get another question, Michelle, let me just kind of summarize. So what we're going to do this evening is take a look at the personal cash flow, which people call income and expenses. Some call it even a budget. Then we're going to look at the assets and liabilities that you own and what you owe, and we'll call that your net worth. And we'll see, are there some resources that the CARE Act can enhance that's not there, it's missing. So we're going to put together almost tonight a three-part puzzle to put together your plan for yourself to get through this difficult time. So now if I can go ahead and repeat your question, Michelle. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I just was so excited to ask you questions. I'm learning so much tonight. What income sources does the CARE Act provide to me and my family while I'm not working? How will it help us?
Great question. Thank you for being patient with me and repeating it. Unemployment compensation is something that most people don't want to think about and talk about. But under the CARES Act, unemployment compensation now is available to all people who have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. So you can go to the unemployment offices and make application for your unemployment compensation amount, and the federal government will increase it by $600 per week through July 31st of 2020. If the Ohio benefit from unemployment ceases, the Fed's going to give you 13 more weeks. So in essence, if you look at the potential 26 week from the Ohio unemployment plus 13 weeks from the federal government, you would have substantial income for 39 weeks until we get back out to a new normal going back to work. As a matter of fact, the new information came out today that the CARES Act adds much more eligible candidates and includes more liberal criteria for claiming benefits. It even allows people who have been self-employed before, independent contractors, freelancers, gig employees, workers, they can actually apply for unemployment compensation through a provision called the Pandemic Assistance Program established within the CARES Act. So make a long story short, you need to go make application to the unemployment.ohio.gov, or you can call this phone number that I'll leave on the screen here to be able to make an application. The information came out a couple hours ago. There are now in the country over 22 million people who have made an application for unemployment compensation. In Ohio, there's 700,000 to date that made application. So they're taking advantage of this program because it's part of the CARES Act bill. So Michelle, is there another question that you might want to consider?
If I've lost my job. Yep, if I've lost my job, what happens? Yeah, if I've lost my job, what happens to my major medical insurance coverage? Am I still covered?
Great question. That is a very important piece of in
Did you hear my question?
I did hear it about the major medical insurance. As a matter of fact, I popped it up on the screen for you. So basically, major medical insurance is one of those things that that we assume major medical insurance will be continued, but you need to check your coverage with your employer. So were you furloughed, expected to be hired back? Were you laid off, told that you would probably not be hired back because the company no longer would be able to be off work for a period of time? So you need to double check with your employer because most employers are receiving benefits through a couple other the CARES Act bills to maintain the employment of their employees, including payment of health insurance and some cases for individuals who have 401k contributions. So if your employer is 500 employees or less, there is an attempt by the CARES Act bill to make sure that all your benefits will remain intact. And the state of Ohio came out with a mandate a few months ago, or a few weeks ago, called 2020-03 that mandates that health insurance companies provide flexibility to employers to give grace period to employers for 60 days per each particular due date. So there are employers who are attempting to make insurance premiums for their employees because they expect to bring those employees back. So you need to check with your employer and find out where are you. However, if your employer, and this is another website you can go to from the Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services Division, they may give you some tips about how to go about doing that. But starting with your employer is a good starting place. If your employer tells you that he is unable to pay for your major medical insurance, then you need to look at COBRA. So COBRA gives you the opportunity to actually switch the employer coverage to you directly, where you are paying the premium that your employer formerly paid. If you do not want to do that, you can go to the Affordable Care Act, which was originally called Obamacare, and you can go because the exchange will open up, because if you lose your major medical insurance because of loss of a job, the Affordable Care Act is now available to you. So, and lastly, and not leastly, you may be able to enroll on your spouse's insurance policy if you're married. If you're single and if you're young, if like under 26, you can stay on your parents' coverage until age 26. So you have to look at what's the best choices for you and be able to maintain your medical insurance. So Michelle, I think the thing I want to kind of maybe continue with would be continue your conversation.
You mentioned having conversations with my employer.
Go ahead.
No, you mentioned having conversations with my employer. How often should I be having them? What kinds of questions should I be asking?
Well, the first thing we just talked about was your major medical insurance and other benefits. If an employer is 500 employees and less, there are more requirements upon him than if your employer is 50 employees or less. So you want to take a look at what benefits are there so you know where you stand. And I guess the big question that we kind of brought up with the last slide, what is your employment status? So are you waiting around for a job that may not be there because your employer was unable to get funding or low interest loans to continue that business? So you need to check what your employment status is. And if you are not really furloughed and not intended to come back, you may need to start looking for another job, or like we said before, is to begin the actual application for your own insurance that you can maintain for yourself and for your family. But if you are not going to have covered insurance from your employer, before you leave as an employee, your employer has a bulletin that they must post. And the bulletin says if you left for a sick leave to take care of, for example, a child who the daycare center closed up and you were an employee and you had to leave to provide care for your child at home because your daycare set up, under the COVID bill, which is a CARE Act, as a subset, there's paid sick leave between 10 and 12 days that you were entitled to. So make sure if you're departing from your employer that you double check that you have some benefits coming. And also, if you left because of a family emergency, someone in your family was affected by the COVID disease directly and you left, there is some Family Medical Leave Act compensation that you're entitled to too. So have a conversation with frequency. I wouldn't do it only by phone calls. I would do it something like an email to substantiate conversations and his or her answer to what your answers are. And lastly, the SBA program for employers who are 500 employees or less, there is an expandable program called the Payroll Protection Plan. And this particular intent of this particular part of the bill was intended for the Small Business Administration to provide loans to 500 or less employers to be able to continue the payroll of all their employees and their pension and their fringe benefits. And the plan itself is up to a $10 million loan. That's really, it's a forgivable debt. And one of the criteria for it to receive as an employer, that 75% of it must go to payroll of employees and fringe benefits of employees. And I just got a memo a little while ago that the Small Business Administration just announced that the $350 billion that was set aside has been now all applied for. So you want to make sure that your employer get in on it because they were granting loans and giving people approvals as quickly as possible.
Great, thanks, Bob. What other income might I receive during this time as a result of the CARES Act?
Well, this is interesting. This is like when someone says, is there anything like free lunch? Well, this is getting some free lunch. This is called the Recovery Rebate Credit and Advance Payment of Credit. This is the one that's, the check is in the mail, as you want to refer to something that's jargon. Starting this week, a few days ago, if you are an individual taxpayer and your adjusted gross income is $150,000 or less on a joint return, or $112,500 as head of household, and $75,000 or less for all other taxpayers, you are entitled to receive a $2,400 joint return stipend, if you will, or $1,200 plus $500 per qualifying child. Now, this goes into effect this year for the 2020 income tax return. So we've had many people ask, do I need to file my 2019 or 2020 tax return, my 2018 return? Well, the IRS is going to use whatever income tax return you had on file at this point. And if you did not go and update your records, by using the most recent income tax return, your refund or this credit is going to your current bank routing number you had when you filed your last return. Or if you didn't have a bank routing number, your particular refund is going to your address of record at IRS. Please note, this particular credit qualifies a qualifying child as under age 17, who is age 17 in the year 2020. So this is very confusing because it's a credit on your 2020 income tax return before it's being filed, but you're getting it now. So when in 2020, you go and file your 2020 income tax return in 2021, they're going to see, did you meet this criteria? And therefore, they're going to say, good, we gave you that 2,000, that 2,400 or a 1,200, and the pot is right. For those people who were missed, they will catch up with those people at that time, because this is based upon your 2020 income falling within these particular adjusted gross income thresholds.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Are there any other kind of rebates, or, it's always very expensive to be tested for different diseases, and if I have to go to the emergency room because of COVID or the vaccines come out, who will be responsible for paying for that?
Yeah, there's been some very great enhancements to the major medical insurance, both private and to Medicare. So it's suffice to say, whatever deductible plan you have, private or whether in the Medicare deductible, those particular deductibles, co-insurance, or co-pays on treatments or vaccines have all been waived. So if you go into the hospital or the ER, or you go to your physician recommends you go to be checked or tested, there are no deductibles for anything that's related to coronavirus. For Medicare patients, they're increasing the ability to do telehealth conferencing with individuals. So all you have to have is a cell phone that will be able to call you and talk with you and check in with you. And what's happened has been enhancements to people who are Medicare Part D, which refers to prescriptions. They will now allow 90-day prescription refills in advance, unless the medication you're taking may have some adverse effect if you took too much. But there's been a complete enhancement to major medical, and there are other bills within, or other parts of the bill that can lead you to taking advantage of more coverages. But the benefit too for insurance is that they've actually asked insurance carriers to be more liberal on premium delinquencies also.
Great, thank you. I've heard a lot about taxes and deferring taxes. What should I be prepared for when it comes to taxes for 2019? And what about 2020 taxes? What should I be thinking about?
Well, taxes, as of yesterday, April 15th was the due date, but it was changed via the CARES Act to July 15th of 2020. But you should also keep in mind that there's still the ultimate extension through October 15th of 2020 for your 2019 income tax return. When you look at tax estimates, any particular people who have been doing tax estimates for every quarter, the CARES Act allows people to suspend those quarterly payments up to including 10/15 of 2020. And for those people who are self-employed, they're allowing them to defer the self-employment tax to 50% to 2021 and 50% in 2022. That is on income tax owed for this year of 2020. But going back to your implied question, for 2020, you have an opportunity to probably do some tax planning, because the credit that you received at 2,400 we just talked about, or the 1,200 and the so much per child, if your income is lesser in calendar year 2020 than it was in 2019, you probably will have to do a lot less tax estimated payments going forward, because that $2,400 or a 1,200 and the amount for child dependent care is tax-free. It's non-taxable to you. It's a credit against taxes due. So it's a good year to do some particular tax planning, and we'll talk about some of those as we go forward. But it'd be a good time to sit down with your accountant and talk about, in 2020, what can I do to pay additional lesser taxes while I go through my recovery plan from the coronavirus pandemic.
Great. Thanks, Bob. I've also heard that there may be ways that the rules have changed, and I may be able to access some of my funds in my retirement accounts and not be penalized. Is that true?
It is. It's interesting, because the retirement accounts, which were accounts that you couldn't touch until retirement, there now is a loan and or a withdrawal provisions from your IRA roller, 401k, or any of your retirement accounts. And if you're under 59 and a half, if you remember the old definition of retirement accounts, you couldn't touch those before 59.5 without incurring a 10% penalty. Well, that 10% penalty has been waived if you need excess money for an emergency or to get you through the rest of 2020. There's up to $100,000 that you can withdraw and or borrow from any one of your retirement accounts. But there is also the ability to put it back. So if you withdraw, for example, from your IRA rollover, let's say $9,000, because you need $9,000 to get you through a difficult period of time, you can take that $9,000 out, and over the next 3 years, between now and when you file your 2022 tax return, you can put that money back, and there's no income tax realized by you taking a withdrawal against your IRA rollover in this calendar year to use for spending money, expenses, etc. Or if you want to, you can borrow from your 401k or deferred comp, and there's a 5-year plus payback loan. Some of the custodians are going longer than 5 years. You can check with your employer custodian for your retirement account and find out, am I better off borrowing money or am I better off withdrawing money? And the key thing is, who is eligible to do this? This is very liberal eligibility for all people, because it says anybody who is directly impacted by COVID through either the pandemic, the virus itself, or someone who was let go from employment and lost their job is eligible for this withdrawal or loan program. So you don't have to be working to be able to get money from your retirement accounts. And the eligibility really is, as I said, very liberal this year. Question I would raise for all of us who are listening to this: if I took money from my account, whether I took $10,000, $15,000, or $20,000, what's the likelihood of my being able to put it back in the next 3 years? Because if I spend that money, how would I be able to replenish my retirement account? And because I took the money out, I may have waived a 10% penalty, but it'll end up becoming taxable 3 years from today.
Great, thank you. Thanks. If I'm turning 72 this year and I have a retirement account, there were some rules that required me to take a minimum distribution. What's happening with that? Am I still going to have to take the minimum distribution this year?
Well, if you require, under the old rules, we were required to take money out of an IRA or a pension fund, like a 401k that became an IRA rollover, by the age of 70.5. And then they changed that rule just this past year and delayed the actual required minimum distribution starting at the year you've turned age 72. So in 2020, if you become 72, you can further delay it 1 more year to 2021. So you don't have to take the money out of your IRA or your pension accounts. If you need it, you can take it out. But if you don't need it, then don't take it out. Previous recipients who were actually already started at 70.5, taking money out of their IRA account or their retirement accounts, they can also suspend the taking this year's contribution or distribution out. And those individuals who had inherited IRAs, who were beneficiaries of those, they could also suspend taking money out of those particular beneficiary IRA accounts, which allows people to let the money sit and compound further depending upon where the money was invested, especially if you had money invested in stocks or mutual funds. If you didn't want to take the money out and take a loss on your investments if the market was down, it allows you to keep the money in there. However, if you need the money, you could take the money from here. It would be taxable, but if you took the money from the program on the previous slide, which you can withdraw the money out of your account on a withdrawal basis for the next 3 years, the withdrawal basis would not create a taxable income to you. The IRA RMD would create reportable income in the year you took the money out. So it's kind of a planning strategy. You can talk to your accountant.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Great. Good suggestion. When I look at my expenses, I realize that my mortgage or my rent, my student loan debt, my credit card debt are mounting. And those are the biggest expenses I have. What can I do to decide who to pay first? How should I be looking at those expenses? Is there anything I can do to help me right now in this difficult time in terms of having my mortgage payment delayed or my rent payment delayed. Is there anything in the CARES Act that might help me here?
That's another beautiful question, because it's a very complicated question that most people are impacted by. So let's take a look at mortgage or renters obligations. According to the CARES Act, those mortgages that are held by the federal government, in other words, you may have taken a mortgage through your bank, through Dollar Bank, Citizens Federal, Key Bank, got a mortgage, but your bank sold that off, the servicing of that mortgage, to Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, or the government directly. If your mortgage is being serviced by Uncle Sam, excuse the expression, there is 6 months of forbearance for financial hardship. That means the next 6 months, between now and September 30th, you're allowed to take a pass on making your mortgage payment. And depending upon how difficult your financial hardship is, there's an additional another 6 months on top of that that can be taken advantage of. So up to a year of being able to suspend your mortgage payment because your mortgage was backed by the federal government. However, if your mortgage is still held by the bank who was originating mortgage lender, you may need to talk with them and find out, would they match that? Would they give you some particular forbearance if they could? This really was very specific in the tax law to cover those banks that were fully covered and serviced by the federal government directly. But it wouldn't be bad to go and talk to your bank about negotiating, would they do it? And most banks today are sending emails out to their customers saying, please come in and give us a call. So make sure that you talk to your bank. For those people who are not mortgage holders, but they're renters in apartments, the same rules somewhat apply to renters of apartments. If you find out that your landlord has a mortgage that's being serviced by the federal government, then the owner also has the ability to let you skate on your mortgage or your rent payment for a minimum of 120 days. And they can't file eviction notices or charge fees for your delay. But I would check with your landlord and your owner of the business and find out if indeed there is some forbearance there or some leeway about your being able to move your mortgage payment or your rent payment in the future a little bit. But they take a good long look too at
Bob,
your.
quick question.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Now, before you move off a mortgage, if I am able to do the forbearance for 6 months or an additional 6 months, what does that mean in terms of my payment? Do I still need to make those payments at some point in time? How am I impacted by that?
Well, what forbearance really means is that they're going to take the unpaid portion of the interest and the balance, and they're going to recapitalize that, if you will. They're going to add it back into the balance that was coming down. So now your balance of your mortgage in the time left, let's say you got a 15-year mortgage left for 15 years of payments. They may extend your payment to like 1 or 2 more years. There'll be a balance increase. They may keep the amount the same, but they'll end up lengthening out your mortgage over time based upon how much you didn't pay during a period of time.
Okay, so they're not forgiving it. They're just pushing my payment out.
They're just kind of like suspending it for 6 months, and they'll give you they may be able to give you additional 6 more months, so it's a year, but it'll give you a chance to work on your budget to find out what you want to do. A good comment here too, maybe that you brought up unknowingly, is what if you had the thought of selling your home at this point, and you were going to put the house up for sale this year, and your goals were interrupted because of Corona pandemic. Well, if you could postpone your mortgage payment and you can sell the house, that will be settled at the time of closing, so you wouldn't have to pay that back out of pocket.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. So probably looking at some other things here, any other debts you may have to consider, I would have a great conversation with my bank, especially when it comes time to my line of credit. If you have a line of credit with the bank, if you own a business, have a discussion about that. Interest rates have come down, as you probably have seen. Make sure that, I know money market funds have come down. You may want to say, can the bank lower the interest on debts, especially when it comes to credit card at this point. That would have a conversation with my credit card companies to make sure that what is their policy about If I need to stretch out my payments, what would be the balance and what would be the charge of interest? Are they in the ability to reduce the interest being charged on my credit card balances going forward also?
Great, thank you. Great.
So with this pretty much leads to, I think, is the other big one that on people's minds. I think, Michelle, people have asked me a lot about student loans because there is this mounting debt that's been increasing. Has been student loan debt is probably one of the most, the largest individual kind of debt at this point. Student loans, according to the CARES Act, student loans are suspended in their entirety through 9/30/2020 from loans that are held directly by the federal government. So there are private loans also, but those loan payments are not suspended by CARES Act. So you need to negotiate that with the current lending institution. So I left a website here, which is studentaid.gov, that will determine for you if your loan is subsidized or held by the federal government. What's key with this, according to the figures that were published, 87% of the student loans outstanding are held by the federal government. So it's an 87% chance that your mortgage, your payment on student loans could be suspended up to and including 9/30/2020. But then they will work out for you a method to pay it off. They may do the same thing with the mortgage, is extend it for another year or two to pay it off at the same payment per month. But that's to be determined between you and the institution that's holding your particular student loans.
Great, thank you. Gosh, so much information for us to all take in right now. What happens though if I'm ill and I'm not able to really manage my money myself? I'm not able to sign, make payments, sign for loans. What happens if I'm really not in control as a result of COVID or cancer? I'm not able to make decisions for myself. What happens then?
Well, I think that's a great question. So thank you for bringing that up. And we've talked about this on several occasions, Michelle. It's so important. There is kind of a bridge here between medical, legal, communication, your beneficiaries, your fiduciaries, legacy planning. Let's kind of break this down. Most people who have gone on the cancer journey know that they have been asked to fill out medical directives. So they're familiar with that. When you go to the hospital, they typically ask you for your medical directives. Now that was a terminology that has been around for the last 20 years, but it really is unique to Ohio. There's the Ohio Living Will, the Durable Power of Attorney for Healthcare, and there's a HIPAA release form. Now what this does, and back to your question, is in this particular document, you're appointing a fiduciary. So in the Ohio Durable Power of Attorney for Healthcare, you name an agent. It's a person that can make medical decisions on behalf of you if you're unable to make that decision because you were in a hospital going through treatment, or you're unable to actually speak on your behalf. So what you need to look at, who are the fiduciaries that you have chosen to be the people who make decisions for me if I'm not able to be conscious at the time that the decision was needed. And a fiduciary, the definition is it's a person who is bound ethically to act in the other's best interest. So it goes beyond the feeling of the person who's been asked to be the fiduciary. So for example, if like my mother, before her cancer, when she passed of cancer, I would go with her to the doctor because I had the ability, I had medical power of attorney with her, and that I had the ability to sit in with her, with the physician, to hear what she was hearing, because sometimes she heard something different than what I heard because of the stress of her diagnosis. So it's important to have those people to be able to be in your life to help you to understand the diagnosis and prognosis. But at the same token, you've named other fiduciaries in your will, in your revocable trustee. You've named an executor or an executrix in that particular will. You've named a trustee, a successor trustee to you in your trust. Have you had a communication with them, had some conversation with them about what it is that you really want to have happen in your documents? So we appoint these people oftentimes, and they're surprised when they're asked to jump into action because they didn't know maybe in advance that they were listed in that document. And fourthly here, where it's seen most, that I find it troublesome when I'm talking with people, what you alluded to is a financial power of attorney. If I have my money in an IRA account or 403B or any type of pension fund, the money belongs to me because I'm the owner of that account. But if I need to go and pull money out of my account and take a withdrawal under the CARES Act provision, if I can't sign my name, who does that for me? It will be the person that you gave your financial durable power of attorney to, who now can sign on your behalf. So these particular documents become the method that can continue what you set out with your own personal medical, legal, financial plan and your legacy planning to make sure that there's no interruption in what happens to get to your money. So we ask people, as they're going through the CARE Act, and as they're going through income tax preparation, it should be somewhat of an annual review, that what you do each and every year, while you're getting your income tax information together, like this year, I'm sure we all started in January to get our tax return stuff together, we began to focus 100% on the past of 2019. So there's not much you can do about the past, but in the beginning of each year, so in 2020 that we're in now, we can't change what happened in 2019, but we can begin to produce the right ownership of accounts, appropriate beneficiary designations, and make sure we have the right fiduciaries, the right people who is the one that we want to exercise that authority and be caring for us if we're unable to act on our behalf. And this really takes some great communication. I've been a member of the AARP for many, many years. Now it's called the American Association of Real Possibilities. There's been article upon article in the last few months about when is it a good time to have a conversation with your spouse about money? When is a good time to have a conversation with your children or your family members? Who should introduce the conversation? Should it be the children or should it be the parents? So what you want to find out through this process, and the gathering place would be a great place to start for information about this, is who is the go-to person for you for your financial or medical issues? Are they different people? Are they the same person? Because when we're talking about your own complete financial planning that you're doing with your personal assets and also what's here with the CARES Act, you've got to make sure that you have documents in motion that can help you complete what you started.
Great. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry for the long answer, but this is a very complicated.
No, it was a great answer. But I mean, I think what you're saying to us is we have to take control. We really need to take control about what we're doing in our financial lives. And you've given us great things to think about. And thanks for all that information. Are you ready for questions from our people who are viewing tonight?
Yeah, let me give a summary so that may help people put this all together. Okay. So what I've tried to do in this last few minutes is we've explored all the resources to put together this puzzle for you as the participant, as our audience member at this point, from looking at what's available as income replacements for you because you've lost your income from your major employment. What are some expenses that can be actually reduced or minimized or furloughed for a little while? And how does that impact your budget? We looked also what you own and what you owe and determine as to what things are available that we can kind of look at as being able to address or to use. We talked about we now can get to your pension funds with a withdrawal or a loan. Then we brought in the other external resource is the CARES Act. So these three things working together were parts of our puzzle. And now you can continue doing that after we ask some questions and we answer some questions, but how you continue building your own solution to the recovery from what's happened in the last few months with the coronavirus pandemic.
Great. Thanks so much, Bob. We're now going to turn it over to Chris Austin, who's been collecting the questions that have been coming in from those who are listening to the town hall tonight. Chris, what's the first question?
So, Bob, first of all, thank you so very much. This was very informative and lots of really good information. So one of the questions, you noted that Obamacare is available for people who lost health insurance. And so the person is wondering, how do they go about accessing Obamacare? How do they go about getting signed up for that?
Well, you can go right on the, the first spot I would go is you go to the one specific Legal Aid Society of Cleveland has a great website that has all these great additional addresses. And on there, you can go to the question, the frequently asked question, how can I get insurance? And it pops you up to the Obamacare website. And it's because you are able to begin to sort through choices that are available, and you became eligible because you lost your insurance because of loss of your employment. But I also, before I go and do that, I would make sure, do I have the ability to get COBRA from my employer to make sure I can compare prices of what I'm getting and the benefits I'm getting at the same time.
Great, thank you.
So one of the other questions, one of the next questions is that you noted a lot of really good information on the PowerPoint slides, and will a copy of this be available to people after this program is done?
As a matter of fact, for all of you who are in attendance, this entire recording will be available, plus of the website, what will include this presentation. It's already there, and Chris will post it sometime in this next few days for you to go and review. So you can take a look at all the particular websites. There are phone numbers, but again, there are the websites also. There are so many websites today and phone numbers to go, but I think you could probably find a lot more information from even your banker. But my go-to was throughout this is to go to the Legal Aid Society. Their frequently asked questions section of COVID-19 gives you a tremendous amount of website and addresses to go to. So I'm not a lawyer, but I'm endorsing the Legal Aid Society website for you to go to.
That's very helpful. Thank you. So one person notes that some of their neighbors and family members have received their stimulus checks already, but this person has not. And they're wondering, who should they reach out to regarding this?
Well, if you're filed your tax return, let's say your most recent tax return on file at the beginning of this year was your 2018. If you've filed your 2018 and your particular refund went to your bank and you still have that checking account number and that routing number, that's where the check is going to. The most recent on-file income tax return, if you did it through a direct refund. If you did not have a refund check that came to you via the bank routing system, your address is on as they'll be hand sent through the mail. So the question is, it just started coming in the mail. I think yesterday was the first receipt through direct transfer into people's checking accounts. So just give it some time. It probably take a few days. There are probably 165, 170 million of those checks coming out, maybe on the high side. There could be a lot less, depending upon people's incomes. So it may take time. It's a huge undertaking. But be careful of the scams that are occurring. I've had people note that there's been phone calls from people pretending to be your bank and saying that we just need to know what your current address is or your bank routing number to get your check. So please check with the Better Business Bureau, because all of a sudden there's been scam after scam being introduced that may try to intercept that check. But to go back to your previous question, be patient and go to the IRS.gov website. And what you can look at is you can look under the, there is Get My Payment. Double check on the Get My Payment portion of the IRS.gov website to look up your information to find out what was the address of record or bank that your check was going to be sent to, if you qualified.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. So the next question, can you share what's considered financial hardship with regards to being able to defer mortgage payments? And is there some criteria that you have to meet and prove the financial hardship?
Great question. The guidelines in the CARES Act say if you've been impacted by the coronavirus, either directly or as a direct loss of your job. If you totally lost your job and you have no possibility of being hired back until you find a new job, that's been kind of the message to the individual employers and to the individual people that pretty much is a COVID-19 acceptable financial hardship. So there is some leniency that's been asked by not only the federal government, by also the state governments. And again, I would go to the Legal Aid Society website, which has a clear definition of the categories of hardships that they can help you to discern in doing that.
So Bob, you mentioned about credit cards and about deferring or eliminating late fees. Is that a CARES Act law that every credit card company will eliminate late fees, or is that something that you have to negotiate with your credit card company?
There's nothing in the CARES Act that I've seen to date, and unless that may come up in a new edition because they're trying to add another stimulus package together through Congress. But there was nothing really mentioned about credit cards. But I think there's been some leniency asked about credit cards to be able to help people delay. The worst thing that could happen is if credit card companies keep charging their 20% plus interest and you just pay the minimum balances and you'll end up with a larger balance. That's why I would sit down and negotiate to find out which is the route that your credit card company can go. And at the same token, there may be an opportunity to take a look at maybe moving credit cards to another credit card company who may be more lenient. But remember, if you're unemployed, your FICO score may be impacted. So you may have a very difficult time moving credit cards. So I think there needs to be some additional information via the next stimulus package is what to do about credit cards, to be actually asking them for forbearance. There's nothing in the CARES Act that I found. If I find something different, I'll be sure to shoot an email to you and put it on your website for you to display that to the participants.
Thank you. The next question, for those of us on the call who may not have a savings account and retirement funds, is there anything specific that you can share with regards to that specific situation? Because you talked a lot about savings accounts and 401 and things like that, but for the individual who doesn't have all of those types of accounts, is there anything specific that you need to share with them or that they should be considering?
Well, that's an interesting question. That's taking a look at what resources do you have to fall back on. If you don't have a retirement account and don't have any other types of savings or investments, then pretty much you're going to be at the need to look really carefully into the CARES Act to find out what things you'll become eligible for to get you through this difficult time. So again, I would refer to the Legal Aid Society because there may be a situation where you may need to find programs that may be qualified for because your income would be so low. You may be entitled to Medicare, Medicaid issues because you don't have enough assets to do those things. So it's really a particular situation for you. Then begin to explore that. And going to the legal aid hotline there or legal aid website will give you some information as whether or not you can have a counsel with the legal aid people. It's how do I think about debt consolidation or maybe look at bankruptcy or those kinds of things, depending upon your future employment too, down the road. Or maybe like the good old days of considering people moving in together during this period of time, because we're all looking at the definition of the new normal that will occur. And I know that people who are on the cancer journey have already been through creating the new normal. This is kind of an expansion of that new normal. What does it really mean to be able to get through, to be independent and not be reliant on somebody else? So this may be some real deep time for some conversation between families is how do we get this together? So kind of rather taking from a theme from an ad, we're in it together. So I think families need to make that commitment to each other to find out how do we do this without being embarrassed to unveil to the family member that they're in some financial straits.
Thank you very much. That was our final question. We did have a number of comments of people just thanking you for sharing this information and for taking the time to pull such a comprehensive program together. So thank you very much, and we'll hand it back over to Michelle.
Great. Bob,
Thank
thank you so much for everything you've done in terms of preparing this great presentation and for all the information you've shared with us tonight. I do want to remind people that the Gathering Place is here to provide you with resources on the cancer journey. One that you might not know about is the ability to come and meet with someone like Bob and just talk about your situation specifically, and to get some information, again, not advice, but to get some information in terms of things that you may want to consider. If you're interested in something like that, you can go to our website, touchedbycancer.org, and get more information, or you can call the Gathering Place office, 216-595-9546, and ask for Eileen Cohen. She can help you with that and other kinds of resources that she has available. Another reminder is that next week on Wednesday, April 22nd, will be our next town hall. That one will focus on stress and resiliency, how to reduce your stress, how to be more resilient, what kinds of tools are available to you. It is going to be a great session with Dr. Francois Aiden from the UH Connor Integrated Health Center. I can't wait for that session. Lord knows we all need to be reducing our stress right now.
Right.
I just want to say thank you again. Bob, any closing comments before we sign off tonight?
Well, just my last slide here is that the government has provided a stimulus package, and they're probably not done yet with CARES Act. The CARES Act came out, but they're probably right now they're arguing about more stimuli to be put into it. But the real question now is that how do we take care of ourselves too? Because we have these addresses we can go to look for different assistance. The CARE Act bill is really stressing a global issue, but there's a lot of parts in there that really apply to us as individuals. So you as the individual, what I hope to have done this evening, thanks to the benefit of being able here to work with the Gathering Place and be a volunteer, the information was to empower you, to become empowered, to know that there is information out there and there are people to help you, to take charge of your own finances and take charge of the conversation about what have I learned from this particular predicament that we've been in. And when we look at defining your new normal, change is going to be consistent. That's one thing about change, it's inevitable. But how do we become better prepared about normalcies going forward? And what I hope that you gleaned from this evening was your own recovery plan from all the relief that was being given from the CARES Act bill. What relief can you create and recovery can you recreate with your family? So implement your plan from a place of knowledge and intention and monitor it with frequency and have great conversation with your family. And then at the same time, think about the blessings you have at the same time we have these challenges. So I thank you for your attendance. I thank you, Michelle, for allowing me to be able to speak to your participants and your audience. I thank you, Chris, for all your help here on the technology piece.
Right. Well, thank you again. Just a reminder to everyone, even though the Gathering Place's doors are closed physically right now, we are available to you by phone, by other kinds of sessions on Zoom and Facebook Live. Please go to our websites where you can learn more about that programming. Again, touchedbycancer.org, or our number 216-595-9546. Again, before we sign off, I just want to once again thank our donors for all of their support. Those contributions allow us to deliver these programmings free of charge. So thank you to them as well. I wish you all well. We'll all get through this together and come out on the end, as Bob has said, living in a new normal. We're yet to see what that's going to be. But stay well. Have a good evening. Good night.